Well, it's the third week, fourth week even of October, November next week. And I've just been going around my garden thinking of all the different things I need to do to kind of close it down for the winter. I've got my little list here in front of me on my clipboard. So I'm going to walk around, I'm going to see what needs doing. And over the next couple of weeks, I'll get all those jobs done. And before Christmas, I'll have all my garden closed down, all ready for spring, just as I love it. One of the first things I'm going to do this autumn, top of my list, is to put my tender plants, my tropical plants, my exotic looking plants into the greenhouse to give them some protection for the winter, give them a little bit of heat, protection from the frost, the snow, the wind. And this is definitely a priority. This is my gorgeous bougainvillea. It's looking the best ever this year, smothered in these fabulous purple bracts. And it'll keep flowering in the greenhouse for quite some time, but I just need to give it that protection. So off we go. Bye-bye to being outside, off into the nice warm greenhouse for the winter. It kind of breaks my heart a bit, really, taking these annuals out, because I grew them from seed. These are statice, and they've been fantastic all summer long, but it's just getting too wet, too damp, too windy and cold now for them to continue. They've gone over, they're starting to die off, so sadly, it's time to take them out, put them in the bin, take them off to the compost heap or put them in the wheelie bin. But, you know, these things happen, don't they? They're only annuals, they only last for a year. But next spring, I can start fresh seeds all over again and have these beautiful, beautiful statice looking fantastic. But on the plus side, I've been able to dry a lot of the flowers as well, because statice make great dried cut flowers. So I can still enjoy some of the flowers indoors. The annuals I've taken out completely by the roots, because they only live for 1 year. Basically, they grow, they flower, they set seed, and they die in the same year. But these are our perennials, my perennials, and these will come up year after year after year. So you want to leave the roots in the ground for these. This is something called lobelia, Lobelia syphilitica, which is a really beautiful purpley blue flowering lobelia. All I'm going to do now is just take these stems right down to the base. And you can see here, if I take these away from the base here and remove these, there's some bit of Houtinia and stuff here as well. I'll just do that roughly, because what you can see at the base here are already the little rosettes, the little shoots for next year's stems and flowers. So clearing that away, that lets the light get down to those, lets the air get in and around, you know, prevents those pests and diseases and stops, you know, sort of deters slugs and snails and things from eating those. And come next spring, those little basal rosettes there will start to shoot up, and I'll get another fantastic year of purple flowers. When you start cutting back your perennials, you don't have to do it all at once. If you've got a big garden, it can be a really big job. But, you know, sometimes it's worth leaving some for a little while longer. These Rebecca, for example, I'm going to leave these for another 2 or 3 weeks. I quite like the little conical heads on the top here where the flowers have died away, and there's still the odd little yellow flower. So I'm going to leave these probably another 3 or 4 weeks. And then eventually, when they look really, really sad, I'll trim these down as well. And as I said earlier with the lobelia, that will let the light get to the base of the plants. And then in the spring, they can grow away and give me this fantastic display all over again. About 6 years ago, I had this raised bed built out of railway sleepers, and I've been really chuffed with it. I've got palms in the top, I've got phormiums, I've got hostas. They're starting to go over a bit now. They're starting to go all yellow and mushy, but it's that time of year. But I wanted to break up the side of it with something really nice and evergreen, so I chose ivies. And I planted all different types of ivies. Some are plain green, some are variegated. But you know what ivy's like? It can be a bit of a thug. It can go a bit mad. So what I do once a year at the end of the season is I just go along with my hedge trimmer and I just trim it back to the edge just to keep it in bounds so it doesn't take over. One other thing I've got to do this winter is reduce the size of this tulip tree, this Lyrorhododendron. I shouldn't have put it in the raised bed really, but I bought it years ago as a reject plant. It only cost about £5. It was only about 4 or 5 foot tall. I put it in this bed and it looked great, but now it's actually turning into a proper sized tree and it's just getting too big for this raised bed. So once all these fantastic autumn leaves have dropped off, over the course of the winter, I'm going to reduce the height down, I'm going to reduce down the width, because I want to keep it, but I just want to keep it much more compact. So that's going to be another little job for me to do during the winter time. This is one of my main tropical borders, and there's a lot of plants in this small space. They really compete all summer long, but they do give this really dramatic look. But of course, to get all this growth, to get all this fantastic greenery and leaves and flowers and so on, they need feeding, they need sustenance. So believe it or not, in about 3 or 4 weeks' time, practically all of this will be gone. It'll have all be cut down to ground level because it'll have all died down and gone mushy. I'll perhaps leave a few of the ferns, and obviously the trees and the palms will remain. But once I can see the soil, what I do every autumn and every winter is I put a nice deep layer of really organic material over the top of the ground. It could be compost, it could be mushroom compost, it could be leaf mold, it could be your own garden compost, whatever you want to use. But a nice deep layer of organic material like this, that will feed the soil, it'll improve the soil, it'll just break down over a period of time. It'll keep the moisture in, but also I put down a really nice slow release granular fertilizer as well. And I actually do that in the winter because I think it's best to do it in the winter so the winter rains can dissolve it, and then the nutrients are in the ground when the plants need it in the spring. If you put it down in the spring and it turns really dry, you've got to fiddle about watering it in. So that's why I do it in the winter time. But I do this every year, and that way I just get this incredible exuberant growth and this really, really good tropical look to my border. When it comes to cutting the grass in autumn, it can be a bit difficult, can't it, sometimes? The ground's getting really soft and soggy, you've got the worm hills, and you don't want to damage the grass, do you? You don't want to squash it all down and create mud patches. So what I tend to do for my last grass cut, which will be quite soon, I use a nice lightweight mower. I don't use one with a roller, so I'll be using my nice little Webb cordless lawnmower for my last cut. That's not going to put lots of pressure on the lawn, it's not going to mash all the lawn up, and it will just give that final grass cut, suck up those last few leaves and things, and just leave the lawn nice and healthy and clean and hygienic for the winter time. Probably the very final thing I'll do as a part of my autumn kind of list, completing my list, will be to jet wash the patio, because once I've cleared all the beds and borders, once I've cut the lawn for the last time, I'd have trodden mud and all sorts of detritus all over the patios and paths. There's leaves falling down still, there's petals, so they kind of stain. So once I've got all the beds and borders cleared, tidied, I've got my compost down, my fertilizer down, once I've done all the other little jobs that I mentioned, then I will finally jet wash the patio, and that will keep it looking really clean and bright and pristine for the winter, and just kind of give the whole thing a nice lift. It'll sort of spruce it up, and just I don't know, it's just nice, isn't it, looking out the window and seeing a really lovely bright, clean, fresh looking patio for the winter time. And there's a few other jobs I'm going to do finally. One is this Scots pine over here. This poor old Scots pine has been in this pot for a long, long time, and we've just managed to buy an extra little bit of land at the back of our garden. So we're going to finally set this Scots pine free. I'm going to take it out of the pot and I'm going to plant it into the ground and let it grow into a proper sized tree, because it's not really happy in that pot anymore. That's going to leave me with an empty pot, and that's going to bring me to my final task for the winter, my final task, which will be when everything else is done. I'll just look round, I'll see where there's gaps, I'll see where there's spaces, I'll see where there's empty pots, and then I'll spend the winter time thinking about gorgeous plants and bulbs and flowers I can use next year to fill those gaps and give me a fantastic display next year. So there's lots for me to do this autumn, but I'm going to take my time, I'm going to do it bit by bit. But by Christmas, hopefully everything will be done, and then the garden can sit quietly, ready for the magic of next spring.